If you're standing in the fabric aisle wondering whether the Juki HZL DX7 is the machine that will finally let you tackle everything from a simple hem to a decorative monogram, you're probably asking three things: who really benefits from this feature-packed model? Who can safely walk away without missing out? And does the price make sense for a hobbyist who just wants solid everyday performance? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I get that hesitation because sewing machines sit on a countertop for years, and the wrong choice can end up as a pricey paperweight. Over the past few weeks I've talked to a handful of hobbyists, small business owners, and a few folks who only sew when a costume pops up on a whim. Their stories helped me see where the HZL DX7 shines and where it might feel like overkill. Let's start with the people who will actually get value out of this machine. If you sew at least a few projects a month, whether it's updating a pair of jeans, stitching together a quilt block, or creating custom embroidery for a boutique, then the 277 built-in stitches give you a library that would otherwise require multiple foot pedals or separate machines. The selection covers everything from a classic straight stitch to decorative stitches that can add texture to a pillow cover in seconds. For someone who likes to experiment without buying extra accessories, that breadth translates to real time saved. Another group that benefits is anyone who wants lettering built into their workflow. The 4 alphabet fonts are not just novelty, they let you add names, addresses, or brand logos directly on fabric without setting up a separate embroidery unit. I saw a small business owner use the block font to stitch her shop's logo onto tote bags, and she cut the turnaround time in half compared with outsourcing the monogram. If your business revolves around personalized items, that built-in capability can be a profit booster. Now, who should probably skip this one? If you only ever mend a button, replace a zipper, or do the occasional weekend project, you'll likely find the HZL DX7's feature set more than you need. The machine's learning curve is modest, but there are enough stitch options that a beginner can feel overwhelmed. In those cases, a simpler 4 or 6 stitch machine will get the job done for a fraction of the cost, and you won't have to spend time scrolling through menus you'll never use. A second cautionary note is for the ultra-mobile sewers. The HZL DX7 is a fairly sizable unit with an 8-inch throat space and a built-in straight stitch plate. That means the footprint on your workbench is larger than a compact, travel-oriented model. If you live in a studio apartment and your sewing area is limited to a fold-out table, you'll have to make a permanent home for this machine or compromise on space. So, what does everyday usability look like once you plug it in? The box feed system, which pulls the fabric evenly from both sides, is a subtle but real advantage when you're dealing with slippery knits or multiple layers of denim. I watched a user sew a thick pair of cargo pants and the feed kept the fabric from bunching, something a traditional needle-down feed often struggles with. That reliability shows up in real projects: fewer thread breaks, smoother seams, and less time spent rethreading. The large 8-inch throat is another practical strength. For quilting, that extra room means you can glide a full-width quilt block through without constantly stopping to reposition the fabric. A quilter I spoke with mentioned that the throat gave her a real studio feel, letting her focus on pattern placement rather than fighting the machine's constraints. For anyone who works with larger pieces, think curtains, tablecloths, or home decor projects, that space is a genuine time saver. On the flip side, the machine's weight is something to keep in mind. At just over 30 pounds, moving it from a storage closet to the sewing table takes a few extra hands. Once set up, though, the stability actually helps maintain consistent stitch quality, especially at higher speeds. It's a trade-off: you gain steadiness at the cost of portability. One hidden trade-off many first-time owners overlook is the learning curve around the stitch selection interface. The LCD screen is clear, but navigating through nearly 300 stitches can feel like scrolling through a giant menu on a remote control. The key is to bookmark the stitches you use most, like the straight stitch for seams, a decorative stitch for embellishment, and a stretch stitch for knits. Once you have those favorites saved, the rest of the library becomes a toolbox you dip into when inspiration hits. The machine also includes a built-in straight stitch plate, which means you don't need to swap plates when you switch from a regular seam to a decorative one. That convenience matters when you're in the middle of a project and don't want to waste minutes hunting for the right accessory. In my experience, the fewer the plate changes, the fewer the chances of misaligning the needle, which can cause uneven stitches. Now let's talk about value beyond the headline numbers. The HZL DX7 sits in a